that just seems a little bit shady. It seems like they're cutting out any sort of private competitors, and you have to use these specific people that they have in their network. It seems like the government is trying to basically corner the market on these VA disability claims. But submitting an optimal claim the first time, the right way, it should be the goal.
Right. Mr. Jeremy Best. So we're here to talk about, of course, veterans and 2024. There's going to be a lot of changes happening, not only with the VA disability, how people are rated, right, but also, in terms of how veterans can get help. So
Right.
just tell me a little bit about kind of your practice, what you've done. You've got the benefit of being a prosecutor. Now you're a defense attorney.
Right.
And let's get that out the way first, and then we'll talk about it specifically with the VA stuff. You're not a VA accredited attorney. I want to be clear, right?
Right. No, I'm not a VA accredited attorney, and I haven't helped walk a veteran through the disability process. And thanks, first of all, for having me on here today. For my business, I'm a criminal lawyer, a personal injury lawyer, and then I do succession planning and estate planning, so like legacy type stuff.
So you've obviously read the GUARD Act, and how do you kind of interpret what that could mean for VA claim help in terms of what a veteran could turn to, say that this passes here in 2024?
Right. So again, not a VA accredited lawyer, not any way associated with the VA, but when I read the GUARD Act, when I've just looked through it, it seems like the government is trying to basically corner the market on these VA disability claims.
You've looked into the PLUS Act as well. I guess what's your interpretation of does that provide some middle ground for maybe opening up pathways to where veterans can achieve, presumably seek help that, hey, maybe you pay a little bit for?
So the PLUS Act, it definitely is distinctive from the GUARD Act, because in the PLUS Act, they at least allow for private entities to become accredited through the PLUS Act. But what I interpret the GUARD Act to be doing and the PLUS Act is basically supplanting the VA and expanding it, but only for VA-approved people, essentially. VA-approved attorneys, VA-approved agents, and that's it. And outside of that network, you're just not going to be able to have any sort of private competition, which, as you know, in a private market or in a market, competition is what drives people to give excellent service. Yeah. That competition raises the level of the product. And when there's no competition, there's no real incentive to compete in a manner to win, if that makes sense.
Right. Where do you think is the middle ground in terms of the GUARD Act? Clearly, it's kind of a throw out the baby with the bathwater in your interpretation, for what I'm understanding. Right. No for-profit organizations are allowed to even, prepare you. I guess how I interpret that, and of course this is my opinion at this point, but the GUARD Act and the PLUS Act as well seems like an escalation of the pre-existing cronyism that's going on in kind of the VA help space, to the point where you now just have this one pipeline of, hey, we're going to take you through, we're not going to reform this VSO system, which really is the elephant in the room, right? Mm-hmm. Why are we having to talk about claim sharks and all this? If the VSO system did a good job, we wouldn't have this issue. But nonetheless, this VSO system, rather than reform that, we're going to cram more people into this overloaded system, submit more suboptimal claims, and have more appeals down the road, which, VA accredited lawyers, and it's so good that, obviously VA accredited lawyers, they have their place, but I didn't specifically want to speak to one because their incentive is up to 30% of the back pay for winning an appeal at the Board of Veterans Appeals process.
I definitely agree with you that sometimes the incentive structure is a little bit off. The incentive structure, to me, in my opinion, just looking at it and the way I interpret it, it just seems to be a little bit dicey.
Could you define what contingency means, and especially in the process of in the context of VA claims?
When I say contingency, I mean that our being paid is contingent or depends upon whether or not we win. And so I don't get paid unless we win. A lot of these contingency fees that are charged from these veterans, they aren't getting paid up front, but they get paid on the back end whenever that claim is successfully or a successful process, whatever term you would use. And whenever that is, and again, they would get paid a percentage of that. And so there's no set amount that could be. Now, they do have a limit. Anything under 20% is considered, as far as VA claims goes, anything under 20% is considered reasonable. Anything above 33.5 is considered unreasonable. And then there's that kind of gray area in between. And these are when it comes to VA claims, when it comes to disability claims, right. And again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, that just feels a little shady to just not charge a flat fee for that, because at the end of the day, that percentage could be vastly different.
Right.
When again, going back to like what we first started talking about, there is a problem with VA disability claims. There's a giant backlog. That's just the fact of it. There is a giant backlog of VA claims. When I talk to my veteran friends, when I talk to any vet, they refer to the VA in a way that almost they shudder to even go to the VA. A lot of them won't go to the VA, even though they need the VA's help. But it seems like the process, because of these suboptimal claims, gets so fudged up, gets so backlogged that these veterans are ultimately not getting their benefits. So what is happening to these veterans while they're in that waiting period?
A lot of it is confusion. A lot of it, sometimes, again, if the claim is filed suboptimally, they'll wait on the decision, and what they get instead of a decision is a letter. Like, hey, we need more information. Could you send us more information?
Right.
And they're told that maybe through their VSO. The VSO says, hey, we need more information. And they're saying, what? You already have my medical records. What do you need? It's this broken telephone chain of speaking and miscommunication. And it really
sounds like bureaucracy.
It is, and it could take a long time. These claims could take a year and a half, things like this. But when you file things and you give the rater everything that they need to be able to make a decision, you can actually kind of expedite your claim. Not expedite in the sense that it's going faster than what it should, but it's going the speed at which it should, which is actually faster than what people would think. The VA can move pretty quick if you give them everything they need to know. But the problem is we're just not doing that on average.
If we can just get people to submit optimal claims from the get-go, that's great. And I think that's a big distinction that we should probably talk about when it comes to either the GUARD Act or the PLUS Act. Because when I read the GUARD Act, the way that I interpret it is what it's really aimed at is those people, whether they are attorneys, whether they're agents, whether they're these private companies, businesses, they're doing the actual preparing, filing, and presenting on behalf of the veterans. But submitting an optimal claim the first time, the right way, it should be the goal.
Right.
And it seems like, really, honestly, from my perspective, your company is actually a solution to the problem that all of the lawmakers talk about. Because even the lawmakers agree. The VA system is complex. The disability system is complex. To apply for the benefits and get the benefits, it's very complex and it's convoluted and there's a lot of gray areas and how do I navigate it? And that's why there's even a market for these VA accredited attorneys. That's why there's a market for these agencies. That's why there's a market for all of these people who are doing the representation, the preparing, the filing, the presentation from the start to the finish. And it seems like everybody wants it to be easier for veterans, right? That's the goal. But your company is actually just educating people beforehand about what the process even looks like.
And I think there's room for plenty of companies to coexist. I think there's room for plenty of veteran service organizations to coexist. And like I said, I work synergistically with VSOs because here's a strategy. go take this to your VSO. You can have them file it.
Right.
But the bottom line is you take something out of the stack completely, where you just completely kneecap the educational space without reforming from the top down the veteran service pipeline. And what I think would be ideal, because that's what kind of my role here is, how do I translate this and the changing legal sort of environment into still having the best path for the veteran? And to me, that is a stack now. So we have the VSOs, which play a part, and I think, in filing a good claim. The problem is when you have the VSOs doing your strategizing and filing, I think you're in trouble. I think you're in trouble just because the infrastructure is not really there for them to strategize an optimal claim for everyone, really even the majority of their clients. I think having a layer of a premium service that is there to equip you at an arm's length with education, and of course I'm biased to be the guy who's selling the course, right? Having a premium service to have you have the education, the foundation, and equip you with the ammo to go out there and package that, take that to the VSO. Now the VSO, they're accredited, and I understand because now you're actually filing the claim.
Right.
I very much appreciate, I know that you're not a veteran yourself, but I know that you're very close. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone us here in Texas is very close to a veteran somehow or another, but the fact that you're willing to voice, your voice for on behalf of these veterans and really weigh in means a lot. So let us know where we can find you at. You're clearly a bulldog on behalf of your clients. And again, you have that former prosecutor knowledge and then now turned defense attorney. So where can we find you at? Who do you take? Just Texas? And
Sure. Anywhere in Texas, I will represent anybody, especially when it comes to car accidents and personal injury. Equipped to handle any type of personal injury claim. As a prosecutor, I prosecuted everything from a Class C misdemeanor to a first-degree felony. Had multiple trials in front of juries, going all the way from the filing of a case to picking a jury and then winning that trial. So I have a really good background as far as criminal law and personal injury law. And then also when it comes to succession planning and estate planning, I call it legacy planning. I like to help ensure that people have a plan for their assets. How are they going to pass those assets on to their children and hopefully their children's children? And so being able to formulate and walk people through that process, it's also really important to me. And so the way that people can contact me, they can go to my website, which is thebestlegalfirm.com, which is a great name. And on my website, I have a contact me page.
Jeremy Vest.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Coming out. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned for scenes from our next episode.
What is not okay is companies who call up these vets, or maybe coaches who end up bullying them, who end up using scare tactics in terms of, oh, we're going to report you, we're going to sue you, or just pay us $5,000 right now, we'll call it good. One of the major issues with the whole process is you're taking someone who is clearly, maybe mentally disabled, maybe has, let's say, combat-related PTSD. They don't even like to talk to their spouse about what happened. It's going to take one more. People are one step away, and at that point, and that's kind of the reality of it.